This is Community Unity Now, the D-Tycoon Show. This is Bill Morton, President of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce, and I am Trudy Leong, Administrator of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. We have with us today the tax doctor, that is, the property tax doctor, Anthony Travis. Welcome, Anthony.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you back here today.
Yes. First, I want to take my hat off to you two, because you guys have opened your arms up to our coalition and the fact that you understand we need to overhaul this system. I appreciate both of you.
Well, there's a lot of work to be done in the city of Chicago and the state
Yes.
of Illinois, and we're always seeking people who are trying to make a positive change and make things a better place for us to live.
Yes. And Illinois is a beautiful state, folks, but we got to save it.
Yes, we've been involved in seeing how a lot of community residents, they complain about the high property taxes, but they don't understand where their money is going.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're here to tell you where your money's going. Your money's going to the school districts. In our state, we have 856 separate school districts. And if you live in Cook County, we have 140 separate school districts. And 61.5% of the 72% of your tax dollars go to these school districts. And all you got to do when you get your second installment on your property tax bill, it gives you a breakdown. It itemizes where all your money is going. Please pay attention to your tax bill.
So you're saying that 61% of the 72% is going to the school districts. What is the 72% going into now?
That depends on what area you live in, that you may be paying 72% of your tax bill to the school district.
So education is a really great thing. We want more education.
We do.
A lot of people in the city of Chicago that I know personally, they're illiterate. They don't know how to read or write. They're very bad at math. They don't have financial literacy, and we need more of that in schools. So what aspect are you trying to advocate for the government dollars in education?
Well, what we're advocating for is that the government, like Hawaii, California, Michigan, Indiana, that the government use the general fund to fund education. And the reason for that is that you get equality, you get equity, you get equality. Because the state can raise more money statewide than a school district in the south suburbs or in the western suburbs, where properties might not be property rich like up north. See, up north, their 1% could raise more money than your 3% in a poor community because they're property tax rich. Mm-hmm. That's the difference.
So if Illinois were to fund education, how much? So they would be funding how much of the education dollar?
We want 100%.
Mm-hmm. And then how do you know how Illinois would parse that those education dollars? Will everyone have an equal footing, like the rich areas? Would they be able to get more of the Illinois general education funds?
Well, the fund will be appropriated on equity, fairness. Mm-hmm. And in most cases, right now, those communities that are in property tax rich community, those students are going to a country club type environment, where in the poor community, you're talking about a Pinto or Yugo type of education, type of environment.
So, for example, we've been interviewing a lot of candidates for different school districts recently that are happening in the suburbs. I'll just mention an example, Skokie and Morton Grove. Mm-hmm. They have schools that don't have asbestos issues, as far as we've heard, and they don't have the crumbling walls, the lead pipes, and all of that. They're not having these kind of issues because they have the funding. Mm-hmm. The candidates admitted they have the funding. Now, if you go to a CTU or a CPS board meeting, or one where they're together, you'll hear they're talking about all these issues they don't have the money for. They don't have money money for the electricity. Even if they put the solar panels on all of the roofs, it wouldn't be enough to cover the electricity. They have lead paint peeling that needs to be remediated. They have lead pipes in their drinking fountains and hand washing sinks. And the heat and the heating and air conditioning doesn't work in their gyms and in their classrooms. So what can we do about this? What in your plan helps this?
What in our plan, what would happen, since the money will be raised statewide through a general fund, like a 2-3% tax, or I use the word fee on everything. Then when it comes to Chicago would have a bucket of money for the classroom. There'll be a bucket of money for construction, remodeling, and that would be for the suburbs as well. And I think when you look at Indiana, how they fund their school, Indiana 101, I think I emailed that to both of you guys. They have buckets of money for everything that they need to have done in their schools. We have to have the same setup for our schools.
Have you done any research to see if Indiana are the conditions of their schools better than in Illinois, and are the grades better?
I haven't gotten that deep. Even some of the schools in Indiana may not be on the same level as our schools up north. Okay, but the thing is this: what we have to understand is that as the adults in the room, and I hear this a lot from people say, I don't have children in the schools no more. And I say to you, you're right, you don't. But the point that has to be made is that all of us are responsible for educating all these children. That's our job as adults. How you go about paying for it is the crisis. Property taxes is not the best way to fund education.
And when you mentioned that it would be distributed equitably to those states, I think you mentioned California, Indiana, Michigan, and Florida, Hawaii. So are they, what method do they have to distribute funds equitably?
Well, they will have the same system that we will have. The state raise the money statewide, and then the state look at the schools and see who needs what. And so the general fund, again, all of that money is separate from the regular budget. Okay, this is the educational budget. This is the educational bucket for construction, education in the classroom. Okay, and that's the setup. And you have to look at all of this stuff from a historical perspective to understand that school over there may need a little bit more money than the school over here, okay? But each school will still get the capital that they need to operate and maintain a good, solid teacher's base. Because teachers are leaving the profession. Let's not forget that.
And so if this were to be the case, if the school districts are consolidated and, that's another topic, but if the tax base will be shifted to the general fund, the Illinois general fund instead of on property taxes, do you have people in those poor communities that need more education funding? Are they helping you advocate? Do those people, those legislators that could help you, do they understand the problem and are they helping you?
I think they understand the problem, but because of historical factors, they are not willing to take on this fight.
What kind of historical factors? It seems as if a lot of historical factors are based on racism.
Racism is one, but when you go back to the 1970 Constitutional Convention, the Peace on Education, the father-son team of the Nichols father and son, who did the analysis of the minutes, they laid it out that in the committee meeting, one delegate stood up and said he disagreed with the majority because Dunn Clark Nitch was trying to get the delegates to vote where we, the taxpayers, all we had to pay was 10%. The state would have paid 90% of the funding. Now, what I say to those wealthy school districts is that even at 90%, if you want to give more to the school your kids go to, you can still do that. Okay? But that's not what they want. And let's make it perfectly clear, folks. Unfortunately, racism still rears its ugly head because in certain communities, they don't want their dollars go to pay to educate black and brown children. And it shouldn't be that way. Not in the 21st. We're almost in the 22nd century. So if we stood together and made every school a good school, and that should be our top priority, okay?
So in that during that constitutional convention, you said there was one delegate that stood up, and what did that delegate do?
He said, "I disagree with the majority. What about the exceptional children?" And he was my white children, that they needed more, okay? And I'm sitting there reading this stuff, and I'm saying, if the state is going to pay 90% to educate your child, what more do you think that child needs? And if they do need a little bit more, you guys got enough money where you live to add more money to your school district.
So in other words, that delegate was against taking the taxation off of property taxes.
He did not want his tax dollars go to educate other folks' children.
Okay, and did that? Was that the start of the property taxes being used for education, so that his area could have more tax dollars for their children?
Well, when I sat on the government task force, what we found out, and folks hear me when I say this, we don't even supposed to have property taxes. That's right, folks, I said it. When you read the Constitution, there was a big fight over property taxes. Matter of fact, the business community was so upset with the state that they sued, and they won a lawsuit. That's why property taxes, and they call it personal property taxes, was found to be unconstitutional. And when Daley went down to the convention, they created this thing called home rule. And the purpose of home rule is to allow local government to tax you. When, if you look at Article 9, Section 1 of the Constitution, the only person or the only body that's supposed to tax us is the General Assembly. That's right, folks. The General Assembly. They don't supposed to give away that authority. They don't supposed to share that authority, folks.
So what was Daley's motive? Did he want more of the tax dollars to remain in Chicago?
He wanted to control the money to operate the city of Chicago. And the legislators didn't want to do their job. Because if the legislators would have done their job, there would be no property taxes. Mm-hmm. The state would raise the money statewide. You have sales tax, other various fees that they would use to fund everything.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, Daley had home rule so that he could get more money, but where the taxpayers end up having to pay more taxes
Yes.
because of home rule.
Because this button here, folks, 9,000 units of government. And at the convention, they didn't want to deal with that issue because they wanted to get home. Mm-hmm. The delegates said, we don't want to prolong the Constitutional Convention because we want to go home. Therefore, they kicked dealing with the units of government down the road, just like they end up kicking how you fund the educational system down the road. And here we are, 75 years later, talking about a crisis that is destroying our state because mama, grandpa are losing their property over taxes, and young people can't even buy a piece of property because of taxes. And the question is, when will the right people, and we're talking about Springfield, wake up and smell the coffee? You got people leaving the state, and as you was telling me earlier, you got friends who live in Indiana. Okay? We know folks who live in Indiana too, and they all tell us the same thing. Taxes in Indiana is low.
That's why people cross the border
Yes.
for gasoline, for fireworks,
Yes.
and well, that was legality, and other things. And during the soda tax, they crossed over for the soda tax as well.
But the soda tax was 1%. The chairman of the county board, Ty Strozier, he made the right decision, but he got beat up about that decision. Okay? But folks, I spent 8 years as a village trustee of Maywood. If I learned anything, government is not free. Government don't run off of air. There's a certain amount of money you got to have for infrastructure. Sidewalks got to get replaced, inlets, outlets, sewage system, okay? All of that stuff has to be replaced. And when you bring it home to education, we're caught up in a situation where we have too many school districts. I went to a school board Monday night. Superintendent already retired. They gave this man a 2-year contract for $500,000.
Did they justify it? How did they justify it?
Well, they said the reason they justify it by saying he wears 2 hats. He's the superintendent, and plus he's the business manager as well.
Well, he has his own business, in other words.
He's the business manager.
Business
right.
manager.
He helped run the day-to-day operation of monitoring the money. Then you got a school called the trustees of schools, where you have a treasurer's office. That office runs the day-to-day operation of overseeing the school funds. But each school has a business agent.
So he retired as superintendent, but he was still working as a business manager.
Superintendent.
Superintendent. He's still working
Yes.
as super. Okay.
And he got a $30,000 raise. Now his salary is $500,000. Plus his retirement check.
So tell us a little bit more about the consolidation.
Well, when you think about consolidation, we want you to understand. You can look at that. When you have to look at the numbers. When you think about Florida has 2,838,000 students. They got 70 school districts, county-wide school districts. We have 856 school districts, 1.9 million students. And Illinois University did the white paper on school consolidation. And on page 4 of their report, I came across this page. And when you read that, it gives you the landscape and the breakdown of these schools. And so I'm saying, well, if we already got 12 countywide school districts, why not add 38 more to it and give us 50? It makes sense to me, okay? I mean, the last time when I was in school and I took math, they told me 1 + 1 was 2. Well, 38 and 12 is 50. And we're steadily losing students, losing teachers. Why do we need 856 school districts? But you know what, folks? You taxpayers out there, don't tell nobody. We gained 9,000 administrators. 9,000. At $100,000 each and a $1.3 million pension bucket that you and I have to pay for. Now,
Isn't there anybody trying to fight back against this? How widespread
We
do
are.
people? Mhm.
We the people.
Right.
We're trying to fight back on this. And you get the pushback from folks up north, property tax rich community, CPS, because they don't want change. And as I said on WVON, the mayor is at odds with CTU because they want a new contract. He said they close. But I would say this to the mayor of the city of Chicago. I would not give them a new contract. Did I just say that?
You can say it to the mayor right here.
I would not give them a new contract. Mayor, this is the golden opportunity of a lifetime where you can get all the stakeholders together. And that's talking about the state, the county, and the city of Chicago. And we need to have pension reform, property tax reform, because the money is not there.
And then by consolidating, how could we work toward
Oh,
the
my God.
pension reform?
You would
And-
have to have a constitutional amendment in order to have pension reform. Let me say that again, because there is a big issue about this. Yes, in 1970, after the convention, there was a vote in December of 1970. That's how we ended up with Article 13, Section 5, where you cannot impair or diminish their benefits. That's now embedded into the Constitution. So in order to...
You said that there was one delegate that stood up and said that he was against what
that was
other-
the schools.
That was the schools,
Right.
okay.
Now, this is the pensions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, understand, we have $146 billion unfunded liability when it comes to the pensions. Chicago have a crisis with their pensions, especially with CTU, because 10 years ago, they came up with this thing called the pension holiday. That's right, folks. That means for 10 years, they did not put money into the pension buckets. And now you got this big crisis going on at CTU, where CTU is looking at the city of Chicago. City of Chicago, you owe us this money. Chicago said, no, we ain't gonna give y'all that money.
So let's put this all together. If we were to consolidate the school districts and we were to put the property taxes in the general fund, so that the general fund would fund education instead
Yes.
of property taxes.
Yes.
So how would that help the pensions?
Well, you would have first. You're still gonna have to have a constitutional amendment to give the legislators the authority to fix the pensions. Then you can begin to reshape the pensions. Because I was on the phone with WirePoint president. Folks, this thing is so messed up, it ain't funny. Now,
Is it salvageable?
yes,
If you were to
is.
fix it, what would that do for the budget in the city of Chicago, for example?
Well, if we're to fix it, it would bring the city of Chicago budget down. Because if you do it the right way, and you use Wisconsin as a model, you got one pension system for all government workers. All government workers. That means if you left Chicago and you went to work for the county, you don't get no second pension. You still involved with the one pension we have.
Because
It
there are
follows
many
you.
double dipping
Yes.
right
Yeah,
now.
no more
Yes.
double dipping,
No more-
triple dipping.
Absolutely.
Will we be able to get rid of the prior double dipping and triple dipping, or are they grandfathered in?
Well, see, I hate to say this, folks, but I am not a fan of the grandfather clause on some of this stuff. Because the reason the whole system needs to be overhauled so you don't father somebody in. Prime example, we're paying one superintendent over the lifetime of his retirement $8 million. Now you tell me, how does that make sense to you?
I think by definition, I think if you're grandfathered in, you're grandfathered in. Much
Right.
like Social Security, it's grandfathered
Yes.
in. You put in, you get it. But we need to make a different
A
we need to make
major
change.
A major change.
If-
Okay.
As long as tomorrow is another day. We could still change it. That just start off a new slate, and then there still will be change, and there will still be improvement.
Well, yes, and the thing is this, folks. We owe it to ourselves to save our state. We owe it to the children, their children, to save this state. And that's why you must overhaul this system now.
We are out of time, Anthony. If our viewers want to learn more about you and we the people, where should they go?
They should call 773-988-0934 or email me, daddysclub2000@yahoo.com. DADDYSCLUB2000@yahoo.com.
The number again, please.
773-988-0934.
And you left us on a ledge there. So we'll have to have you back, and and you'll have to give them a call for more information because we haven't completed this whole thing yet.
Thank you so much, Anthony Travis, the property tax doctor. Bill Morton, President of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. I am Trudy Leong, Administrator of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for watching Community Unity Now, the D Tycoon Show, and we will see you again next week.